Third time would be, yeah, Canada, in this document that I'm sharing, that I was doing some research, and I came across the 16th anniversary. And basically, that document says, and I said this before in our meetings, there was 4 countries that did adopt the UN Declaration back in 2007, when it was originally adopted by 144 countries. But the reason Canada and these 4 countries didn't want to adopt it then was the original UN UNDRIP declaration, Indigenous Declaration, was so strong in sovereignty, in terms of sovereignty and title ownership by our Indigenous peoples, that they felt threatened if they adopted it. They had their comprehensive land claims process going since 1993, and they didn't want that disrupted because cash for land. Basically, this is what's going on with MMS, and that's been almost 2 decades now that they've been going at doing this comprehensive. But that's part of the reason why Canada didn't want to adopt the original UNDRIP. So they said, no, we're going to reject it now, but we're going to go back and then we're going to work on our own UNDRIP, Indigenous Declaration. And at that time, I think, what's her name, from BC, was a member of Parliament at that time, Wilson, Jody Wilson. And at the time I thought, well, geez, now we got somebody whose father was part of the 1982 Constitution talks, Bill Wilson. He fought Trudeau and the premiers tooth and nail, on Indigenous sovereignty and the title. But for some reason, when she became a member of Parliament, Liberal government, she too was saying, I remember you remember the Niagara Falls Summit? Then we sent 2 people over there to pay for their expenses to go and deliver our declaration at that time, saying that we rejected Canada's version of trying to water down the original UN Declaration. At that time, Wilson was there, and she was basically siding with Trudeau at that time, saying, oh yeah, we got to work on this, we can't accept it the way it is, we have to modify it, that it goes in line with Canada's laws and so forth in regards to land claims and so forth. And I was surprised, I was shocked that she would do that, because her father was a lawyer too, and a good one, constitutional lawyer. But anyways, that's what happened. They went ahead with it. And not too long ago, they got done with it. And the Bill C-15 was, it passed through the Senate last year, if I recall. But Bill C-15 is not law yet. It passed through Senate. But what's going to happen is Bill C-15 enabled the government, NAFN, and the Indian Act chiefs to work on how the relationship is going to be between Canada and First Nations. But right now, if we look at the process, these nations that they're calling are nations, they're Indian Act Bank Councils. NFN and all of its membership are Indian Act Bank Councils. So therefore, number one, they're in a flawed relationship, and the process itself is flawed. And there's right now, looking at even this week, 2024, there's a lot of First Nations across the country are saying no to this through the process of reconciliation through this Bill C-15. They're saying, and a lot of them are hereditary original governing systems like ourselves. And in some places they're they're joining forces in in rejecting this. You know, hopefully we thought this was going to happen here, but I haven't seen any sign as to that happening yet. I mean, we have commitments made, but that hasn't happened yet. But what we're going to do, 2024, is focus. We really have to focus on notifying, which we did. We notified, I shouldn't say notifying, we've already done that. We've done that since 2015. We've notified several prime ministers of our declaration of our sovereignty, you know, how we stand as the original governing district, 7th district governing system. And then we did that with Bill C-15. So that part is all done. And we don't have to do that, because when I look at different organizations that I joined throughout the years, you know, different indigenous organizations, whether it be Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, or not so much this way. Unfortunately, the Mi'kmaq districts over here are right in line with Trudeau and AFN. I mean, they're like this. And for the life of me, I can't understand, because the peace and friendship treaties that were signed from here to Cape Breton are the strongest treaties in Canada. There's no wording in that about land cession. There's no wording in that we went on a bended knee to the British King. When those treaties were signed, they were signed nation to nation. And the British knew when they were signing with the ancestral district chiefs, they were signing as nations. They weren't signing as one that's higher than the other. No, they were signing as equals. And there was a study done in our Declaration of Sovereignty, if you remember reading it. There was a study done in the United Nations where basically they did the study on treaties, whether they were valid in the 1800s. And the recommendation that came out after the study was done, not the recommendation, but the opinion that came out of the individual that did the research was, he said the same thing. He said when those treaties were signed, they were signed nation to nation between the British King and the ancestral chiefs that signed those documents. He said, but unfortunately along the way, you know, they sort of didn't fulfill their obligations under the treaty. They made their own laws. I call it judge-made law. You know, they went outside of the rule of law. Because the rule of law is basically what 1763 proclamation says, that if we still own the land and we never sold it, it still belongs to us. And Canada knows that because it's part of the Constitution. In 1982, 1763 was in section 25 or 35. And basically, it says what I just said. If our ancestors didn't freely give up the title to our district homelands or sell it to the Crown, British Crown, we still own it. But Canada, since then, has sort of created its own, every province created their own legislation, sidestepping 1763, and it started in British Columbia back in the mid-80s. There was a big meeting amongst the politicians about how they were going to, well, what are we going to do about 1763? And one BC had virtually the premier at that time. Politicians said, well, we just never mind, don't bring 1763 up, because if you do, it's going to create a whole can of worms, and the Indians, once they learn exactly what it means, it's going to be a big problem. So let's just do it. And that went on for a while until those constitutional talks in 1982. That's when Bill Wilson, all these negotiators, Smokey Briere or whatever his name was, but he was a good speaker too, very powerful. And basically they told Canada, you don't own it, we're still the owners. And that's why that 1763 is in the 1982 Constitution. It was because of them. They fought to have that put in there. And it's a good thing they put it in there, because, you know, today, Canada wouldn't even be negotiating with us. They wouldn't even offer a dime in land claims or whatever. But they put it in there, and basically these documents here, the both of them, support the underhandedness of Canada, how it's not living up to its obligations under law, Canadian law. And I think what we did, because I remember saying this a number of times, and we served our declaration of seven district declaration of sovereignty, and the recent one. Their only response was, "Oh well, yeah, we received it. We're going to give it to Trudeau." And then the other one, "Yeah, we received it, but we're going to give it to ISCC, which is Indian Affairs. It's just a different name now, part of Indian Affairs." But they said, basically, what that means is it's like a hot potato. They didn't want to answer those questions that were put forward in the declaration. And it wasn't even questions that we put forward, it was positions that we put forward, that we were still sovereign, and a sovereign Mi'kmaq people. We were the original title holders and so forth. And, you know, the treaties affirmed that, 1763 affirmed that. They didn't argue. I mean, if it wasn't true, there would have been a 5 or 10 page letter saying, "You're full of shit, we own it." So therefore, your argument that you put forward, that you're still the owners, there's not even 2 words, you know, to say what you just put forward. It doesn't have any merits, but it does. So that's twice that we did that. And I think they want to avoid it. They don't want to deal with that, because right now they're using cash. They're using 10-year funding agreements that they're signing. They're saying, "Oh, it's only a test for 10 years, the funding, and you can reject it if you want." Now, 10 years is a lot of money. How many millions is that? You have an idea, Ken? 100 million? Well,
Oh,
give and take?
10,
So, what has to happen, and I think it's getting stronger as we sit here, like 2023, we talked about this, we had Russell Divo here, and Russell's one of the many people that are instrumental in pushing this. And I keep close contact with him too, because whatever he sends, I relay to other people on this side, whether they listen or not, you know, the Eastern Maritimes. I think this community, or I should say, this body is the only body that's really objecting to what's happening in terms of what's going on with Bill 315 and UNDRIP. But we do have alliances. We're not alone in this. Well, I'm going to go through the documents. I highlighted it. This one's a 9-page, but I'll do the highlighting part, and as I go along. And it's very informative, because, you know, they're saying the same thing we've been saying, that, you know, what Canada and the United States are doing, it's not right. It's not in line with the original UNDRIP, and that there should be even the international organizations that are listed here are saying, no, you can't be doing what you're doing. You have to negotiate as equal partners, as the partnership that existed with our ancestral chiefs. But that's not what they're doing. So on the this is the second page. I didn't mark that because my copy didn't pick up the page number. The rest of it is there. I'll start with the the highlighted, and you'll notice that I tried to capture everything, but it wasn't. It was an article, so it wasn't numbered. And I tried legal and to catch it, but there may be a couple of sentences missing on top, but we'll just do the highlighted. So it says on page 2, as I said, that the 4 countries that didn't adopt it was Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and the United States. They voted against it, as a matter of fact. They just didn't abstain. They voted against it. This hard-won victory came at the heels of over 3 decades of international rights advocacy, marches, negotiations, and movements by the indigenous peoples, which is true. This started a long time ago. I guess there was a delegation from each province. I believe one of them was, what's his name? Deer from Kanawag? Kenneth Deer. And different countries too, not just Canada. This international indigenous rights movement was not solely a political movement. It was a spiritual and cultural movement that ultimately disrupted the global status quo and colonial norms of states that for too long had ignored the existence of indigenous peoples. And that's true. In a way, if it wasn't for those people, the delegations that were appointed by their different countries, we wouldn't be able to counter what Canada and the United States are trying to do. And it mentions here a little bit down the line. I think the changes to international law led by indigenous peoples would ripple out for decades to come and create positive impacts for other marginalized peoples. Again, that's true. During the 70s, elders mandated rising indigenous leaders to take their treaties to the UN. These young indigenous leaders journeyed to the United Nations with a vision given to them by their elders, and in turn, they changed the world. Today, the next generation of indigenous leadership is stepping into the helm of the international indigenous rights movement. The steps and milestones achieved by indigenous leaders since the 1970s laid the foundation for future generations to go even further. And I like this clause. Because that's what's going to happen here. Most of us, a lot of us here are the elders now. Granted that we, Geraldine and Marilyn, and there's many more here. They're older than us, but they're supportive of what we've been talking about. We've been talking about this for 10 years, ever since we formed an alliance with the Elders Association. What was it? The Elders Alliance? What was the, remember when we first got together? What was your organization called? Anyway, it was Elders. Concern Elders.
Oh, concerned members, yeah.
And then I'll tell you, for a while since the Bastide fight, but we fought with Quebec province and other matters, logging and all that, and other blockades. And after that, then membership sort of almost died down because a lot of the members were went over to the band council because of the lobster licenses and other different licenses that were being allocated. But it didn't. And for some reason, when our alliance was formed between our tribal council and the elders concerned elders, we picked up again. And when I read this clause, I look at the importance of having that transition, the knowledge from the elders transferred to the younger generation, because they're the ones that are going to take up our fight. Because if that doesn't happen, you know what's going to happen? Canada and the provinces will get their way. Because if the knowledge in that area is lost in terms of who we are as the original peoples of not just the Southern District, but Gespegawagi, if that's lost, well then everything is lost. Because that's the meaning, it's lost. There's nobody there to pick it up from where we are now. And then the most important thing of not losing that, and I've said it again and again and again, every one of us has children and grandchildren. And I'm still, I cannot figure out why these people do not understand the consequences of what's going to happen in how they're dealing with this federal government in terms of this issue here, critical issue, in terms of our territories, our homelands, our peace and friendship treaties. And we can't let that happen. And it's not going. I'm not saying it's going to happen. You know, we still have the backbone here. There's a tribal membership, which I'm proud of. You know, we're outspoken. This group has been outspoken in terms of protecting our territories for our future generations. We've been doing that all along, and we haven't lost that. But we have to get these younger people who get their education to universities to become lawyers, whatever, researchers. And this is what they did over there. They're talking about when they met in the 70s. That's what they did. You know, they got their young leaders who are educated in law, constitutional law. And the fight, and I said it before, 2023, and I said after this fight will can't be any longer contained here in this. It's got to go. What these documents are saying, we have to form alliances where we start looking at the international arena. You know, United Nations made it sound like it's you know, way out of reach for us, but no, United Nations is only in New York. You know, when you think about it, what, 13-hour ride? It's not, but we have to make alliances, and we talked about that too. Alliances first, and there's groups up there that are already doing this. You know, they're actually. I'll speak about this a little bit more, because when I did the research, if you see on the bottom, cultural survival, I met up with these people before. It was last year. They got in touch with me through Gespegawagi. I didn't understand where they were coming from though. I thought they were just an environmentalist organization. But then, when I was doing the research today, I started reading their, and then I went to their website, and when it opened up, there was more to it than that. They're actually advocating for what was originally adopted in the original 2700. And we're talking about what Canada, you know, what's trying to do is basically weasel out, and by creating their own watered down version and saying to the world, oh look what we've done. Look what we've done with our Indians. And they like to say that too, actually use that wording. They used to use it at the UN, oh, our Indians, they don't mind. When they were talking about the comprehensive land claims, that was back in 2005. And they had their annual meetings, and Russell Daibo's friend, Arthur Manuel, who was part of that UN or indigenous organization fighting to end the comprehensive land claims, because it was underhandedness by Canada. They throw a bunch of money, you know, to any chieftain council, whether it's here or BC, and they signed up to it. BC actually did that. They signed the Nisga'a land claim, and they were promised this. Oh, it's going to be a lot of money. It's up from them. Within 20 years, they were broke. And then they went back and said, "Hey, it's not fair." And Canada said, "Hey, a deal is a deal." That's basically what it is. So, in Canada, when questioned about that by the UN Human Rights Commission, oh, they said, they don't have a problem, you know. So chiefs and councils are signing it, they don't have a problem with that yet, but that's the problem. Chiefs and councils don't have the consent from us. We're the title owners, each one of us. Chief and council are put there as trustees. But that's not what's happening. It's not just here, it's this way and that way, east, west. That's what's happening, but in these documents it says, you know, that free, informed, prior consent. It doesn't mean having spaghetti and big lunch and, you know, forget about, oh, these are nothing, you know, just a big lunch and everybody's happy? Oh, wait. And no, I'm sorry to say, but their version of free prior consent is basically based on that. And to top it off, when Harper was the Prime Minister, on one of his omnibus bills, he lowered the threshold on consensus and majority of votes, right? Now it can be, like we're sitting here, majority can be taken, a quarter of the people have to say yes, and that's it. The rest, well, we don't care what you want to say, as long as you meet that threshold. And it was, I think, 25%
25%.
at that time. And that's what's been happening here too. You know, you have 200 people voting. We'll use the Zenithus example. 200 people voted on that.
25%, and the second time it comes up, it's only 10%.
Yeah.
That, when that vote came up, I was a counter. And before that, I asked that Paki or whatever
Yeah.
nationality he is, I said, hey buddy, were you related to the last Hindus or Pakis that did the textile here?
Yeah,
He walked away from me.
yeah,
$4 million.
yeah.
$4 million with these guys.
So I'm going to continue. We're on page 4 now. And after this, I'll take any questions. And this is where it says, in 1974, a group of more than 5,000 elders and traditional leaders representing 98 indigenous nations from 9 countries gathered at Standing Rock Reservation in the Lakota Territory. It is now commonly known as South Dakota, USA. These elders and leaders decided to take their treaty issues to the international level, especially the UN, and so they officially founded the International Treaty Council. So that's in 1974. You know, they were able to do that. You know, this is now 2024. And we should be able to, you know, to start doing the same thing, because back then communications wasn't as what we have now. Now we have Facebook, we have emails, we have Zooms, and I mean everybody. When I read, and a lot of it is on Facebook. A lot of it is either Russ Divo or other, I don't know, more people talking about this. What we're talking about now, they're talking about it. But nobody has.
3 times.
Nobody has done what we have done in terms of actually putting our position forward to Prime Minister. And we did that through the declaration of our 7 district sovereignty, and we did that at this UNDRIP. And I keep telling them, we did that. There's a reason why we did that, because I had I had 2 very knowledgeable international constitutional lawyers. Bruce Clark was one of them. And I always said that. Put it in writing. Don't just write it on Facebook. Facebook is like a big black hole. You put it in there, you want to stay there so long, and then after that it's gone. You know, it'll take you days and days just to try to revive what you put in there. Just write it. You know, state who you are. And the other firm was from Montreal, Franklin Gertler and Peter Hutchins. When we did our salmon fishing law, You know, just do it. Just say, do it. Tell them who you are. Tell them where your Aboriginal right comes from. It's a creator-given right. It's an inherent creator-given right. And he said, if you do that, Canada or the province can't argue that it isn't, because it is. You know, we were the first people here, and that's how we did it. And they couldn't challenge that salmon law and the rangers law, because those two were lost. Those two documents were not policies; they were laws. But people, for some reason, the political people after us didn't understand that, or didn't want to understand it. That was a powerful instrument, because it stopped DFO, it stopped MEF, it stopped Brunswick Natural Resources from coming back in. Because we had a law that took care of conservation, took care of monitoring. And what happened now? Where are we now? If we look at those things, we're right back into the province's lap. They're training our people to be certified rangers.
Well, they're looking at, well, they're teaching them how to legally search your home.
Well, it's provincial, it's under provincial
That's what I mean, you know?
game laws.
So that's exactly what you said, that's the provincial or federal, whoever the DFO is under, right?
Both, DFO, I mean, they were here, DFO with their uniforms and guns and,
Yeah.
you know.
We wouldn't have known until Danny went live.
Yeah.
You know, I take
I know,
he
I
knows
know.
that much.
Yeah, well, yeah, of course. So, anyway, it further states, you know, what did the global indigenous rights movement achieve with the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples? And it goes on to say that the recognition of indigenous peoples' collective human rights. Prior to the declaration, indigenous peoples were codified as minorities and individuals entitled to assimilate state-centric human rights, and that's very true. Before the UNDRIP and the work that was done by these representatives that were sent there by the elders, it was happening. You know, I can say that over here, we've never accepted that, regardless of what was in. We've never accepted assimilation. We've fought. We have a track record of fighting governments, provincial, federal. The recognition of indigenous peoples' collective human rights brought greater specificity to the rights of other diverse groups of minorities and ethnicities, which is right. A first of its kind international stakeholder dialogical process whereby indigenous peoples had direct participation alongside member states in the drafting of the UN Declaration, and that's true. You know. They were equal partners when this declaration was being done. That happened for I think it was 20 years, 2 decades or 3 decades that they were negotiating. Page 6 goes on, the recognition of indigenous peoples' rights to self-determination of their social, economic, and political status. In other words, the right to determine their own futures, qualification, or to fight to free, prior, and informed consent, which obliges states to consult with indigenous peoples on any infrastructure projects concerning their lands, waters, and natural resources. That's still a problem now. We don't know what some companies are doing here, mining companies. You know, they're here. They've had meetings in Quebec City, conventions or conferences, it's conferences that I know LMG has been part of too. What are they talking about? I know the resources, there's a lot of resources in terms of mining. One of them is, of course, uranium. That's been ongoing for 40 years, I think, Frank, even when you were a council member.
Yeah.
They found uranium, it's here. But what's being negotiated?
I see that a lot of the directors of MMS, they're making their way out. I don't know if Chas is on her, making her way out, but that's what it seems like. I don't know, maybe Kathy has something on that, I'm not sure. But what I'm reading is it looks like Chas is making her way out somewhere else. Greener pastures, I guess.
I just think the MMS has been stagnant for about 2 years now, maybe longer. There doesn't seem to be any clear direction or leadership right now. It's just functioning as a function. I think the main concern, and I brought it up before, is no council wants to be the one to pull the plug because of all the jobs that are involved. But I know that the question and the mandate of MMS is becoming more and more unclear as time progresses. So that means that it's being more and more questioned. So right now there's no director. There hasn't been a director for almost going on 2 years. They're supposed to repost, but there's still a lot of questions about where it's going, what is the purpose of MMS. If it hasn't been given direction by leadership in about 2 years, then what is the purpose?
Are the feds questioning it?
No,
No?
the chiefs are.
Oh, okay.
The chiefs are.
Okay.
They're trying to figure out like what's going on with MMS. But you're right, it's.
They wrote a book in 2 years.
They wrote a book in 2 years.
They're not getting any direction from the
They're
chief.
not getting any direction from any chief and council. I mean, there was one thing they did for Gespeg and Gespegawagi because Listuish didn't want a part of that. So there seems to be some pulling away in all directions from the three communities.
Well, then they should suspend their funding. They should
So,
dissolve the
again,
organization.
Again, there's a lot of our own people that are sustained through that.
It doesn't matter if people are talking about jobs, okay? Most of the time they're talking about jobs. But if they're not accomplishing anything through their work for the band, they shouldn't be allowed to do anything. They shouldn't be getting paid. If an individual is not doing their job, they shouldn't get paid. As far as I'm concerned, I don't know about anybody else, but they're spending a lot of money with MMS.
I agree with you, Frank.
Yeah, but then the funding comes from of course, the federal government on these agreements, and I just brought it up recently again. It has been brought up in the past. It is listed under the Canada's Government of Canada website as a tribal council. It is not a tribal council. It is a tri-council. And I know that 2 directors prior were instructed to inform the Government of Canada, this came over the past 10 years, to change that. Stop calling themselves a tribal council and redefine as it is in the development or the creation of MMS, it is a tri-council, which is 3 councils coming together. It is not a tribal council. They don't speak for the whole tribe of Mi'kmaq. So there is a difference there. It has never, to my knowledge, been straightened out with the federal government.
But they're also forming shell corporations. They're borrowing money from the band. The government is not funding all their salaries and stuff, or all their research. It's somebody else is putting money into it. It's got to be coming from the band resources.
Windmill?
Windmill, maybe?
Mm-hmm. Windmill.
Yeah.
So
That's what I'm saying.
windmill, if you read the financial statements, and you'll see it in there. They've been borrowing money since 2017.
That's why they're having a time to distribute amongst the 3 communities.
Well, when I was in there, 2018, they were borrowing 2 point some million.
Well, the financial statements were,
18, 19, 20.
I don't have them in front of me to look at. I believe Gary, if he's looked at them, he says that's where the money is coming from.
They're borrowing from the
MNBC. But there's
windmill project.
there's stuff, it's like this.
MN
MNBC and MMRC and MMS were all working together somehow. Salaries were being paid to MMS by MMR and then MNBC. And, you have to read all the documents, it's all in there. I mean, I got those when I was a council member, and
It's all white.
But what is the
And
purpose?
nobody
of
knows
these?
if you don't know. Huh?
What's the purpose of
The
them?
purpose of them is MMS spoke for the 3 communities giving permission to do windmills. This is my understanding. They had to create MMBC because MMS is a non-for-profit organization. So they needed an entity legally to earn money. Because a non-for-profit organization cannot earn money. You're there to provide a service, okay? So, and it's all in corporations, and I'm not a corporate lawyer, I don't know very much of that, but I do know that it has to do with the legalities of managing profits, okay? And the ability to have a profit. So they had to create an MMBC, they had to create a business. Okay, so MMBC was very tightly knit with MMS, and because they are managing the business that came out of MMS and the windmills. Right now they're trying to reinvest in other businesses. However, there's a lot of question as to how are we going to reinvest in other business when we still haven't come to an agreement on how we're going to distribute the revenues from the windmill that we already have and had for the past 15 years or so. The revenues are about $30 million sitting there amongst the 3 communities.
It's not counting the money that's been going out too.
Not counting whatever, but whatever's sitting there now. Yes, there has been borrows on it for salaries, for whatever, for investment in other projects. I don't have the details. But I do know that if it were to go for a per capita distribution, it wouldn't be very economical for any of the communities really. It would probably end up to each person getting maybe $1,500. That's it, because if you look at the settlement we had, the Bustede settlement, it was $60 million, $53 million. We only got in this community out of $50 million, what, 15,000, 14, 15,000 each, and that's just one community, and that was double of what we have now in MMBC or with the windmills. So that being said, we would have to share that again with 2 other communities, which is Gespegawagi and Gespeg. So we're talking a very low amount of money per capita. We're still into negotiations because at least one of the communities believes it should be 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. And there was an agreement, verbal agreement reached where Listiger says, okay, we'll cut back 13% and give 7 or 8% to Gespegawagi and another 5% to Gespeg to kind of even out, because we're not in for 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. We have a greater population. We actually, Listiger put more money in the beginning. And so this 1/3, 1/3 is not holding water because we do have a larger population. That was not agreed upon at the chief's table, and it went stagnant again. Again, it's trying to come back to the committee of the chiefs and the MMS body, which is the 3 councils. But again, we're unsuccessful in getting a meeting. We're unsuccessful in a lot of things. So there's still a lot of discrepancies and a lot of, the people are not happy with it. The communities, not just us, the other communities are not happy with any distribution arrangement or the amount as well, because it seems to be low. And initially people thought they would get like tens of thousands of dollars, but when you really do the math, you're lucky if you get $2,000.
Did the second phase pass?
For the second phase for what?
The windmill.
To my knowledge, I'm not sure. I couldn't say one way or the other. I've heard that they signed another agreement. I'm not sure on that end.
Is that with the consent of the 3 communities?
It would have had to have been, but I'll be quite frank and honest, I'll be honest. I don't make it to every council meeting. I'm often, for my job, working elsewhere, and so sometimes I miss those meetings, so I don't know if they received the consent. I do know that we haven't had a 3 tri-council meeting in over 2 years. So is it with the consent of all the 3 communities? Not from the councils that I know of.
But there's rumors going around that they want to create their own separate entity,
Who wants to? MMS?
MMS, with the 3 community people that are involved. They want to govern themselves.
No, I don't think.
They can't do that. It has
There was
to-
a room, that was 2 years ago too, but as she said, it's stagnant. I mean, the organization's
It's, yeah,
not
and
in any
it's,
direction.
and they don't have
But the thing about that is they got, they're borrowing for salaries. They got chicken feed for the communities, but yet go into a phase 2. That's a multi-billion-dollar. You know what I mean? Something has to be coming back.
We're gonna keep going with this for now.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wanna finish if we don't. We all know the history, the historical, and, but we'll get back to it at the end. I just wanna, this is more important, I mean, that's important too, but, you know, to continue with our,
agenda. Yeah.
agenda.
I always seem to do that.
Yeah, the next one was, what was achieved was development of international indigenous human rights strategies, policies, and organizing methodologies that offer the foundation for future generations of indigenous peoples. You know, that's there. You know, with this group, the cultural and survival, it's there. And like I said, I was in communication with them just past year, 2023. And when I looked at the board of directors with this cultural and survival, sure enough, the person that I was talking to was a lady by the name of Valine Brown. And they were quite interested in knowing what we were doing in terms of asserting sovereignty, because I had told them about our declaration and so forth. But we sort of lost communication at the end of the fall months. But it would be nice, I think it would be nice to get back and connect with them again, because in order to do what we want to do in the international forum, we have to have an organization that's already established there and already fighting. They've been fighting for this along with other indigenous organizations that are there too.
New Hampshire, +1 603 557.
See, this is what you do, Pete.
I did that a while ago.
Okay, and it's important, what it says here and what it said before this.
This one?
6, page 6.
It's all highlighted.
We don't have any markers on it.
No, we don't have.
They're in the bottom, you kind of start to see, they're in the bottom corner, right-hand
It
corner.
says 6 out of 15, way in the bottom. Gotta get your magnifying glass.
Yeah.
6:15, well, this is what I want, 6:15.
Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
where he's
All right.
talking, right about here.
So, yeah, I mean, in order to transfer that knowledge too, but there's a problem in trying to find youth, indigenous youth, and to, I guess, coming here and sitting with the tribal council and learning about what we're talking about. We have lawyers from here, but they're not here. They're talking about, you know, something that it's like a hamster in the wheel. It just keeps going around and around and around and around. You know, you'll never short circuit what Canada and the FN is doing by just doing that hamster in the wheel. It has to take the original ancestral governing nations to assert their, as we did, but you have to do it. Can you imagine if we did the same thing as what these indigenous organizations did up in, was it North Dakota, South Dakota, back in 90s? You know, they all got together. But that's what needs to happen. And on our part, we have to make these alliances now. It's not just our meetings. We can have meetings all we want here. Years to come. Now is the time to while this issue is hot, it's hot across the country, so. I'll be getting back to this Valine Brown and try to pick up where we left off, but not only that, but have them come here too, make a presentation like Bruce McIver. On to the next one, the next page is 757. And this one's about women also, the top part is not there, but guidance on the rights and protections of Indigenous women and girls, which previously was absent from the convention. And that what they're saying is it's now a UN international, it's on their agenda. The committee will conduct procedures for monitoring state compliance, investigating complaints, and developing human rights reports, integrating data concerning the rights of Indigenous women and girls in the future. That's important too, you know. But in each sector we have to have different people who can deal with that, like for the women and the girls on legal issues, you know, historical issues, and if we can get that group together, it'd be a much more powerful. I'm not saying that we aren't, because I think we are. As I said earlier, when we sent out our declaration of sovereignty document to Canada, they didn't want to touch it. Provinces didn't want to touch it, and we know why. It goes on to say, during the 2-day Indigenous peoples, this was in Geneva, Switzerland. And there, Indigenous peoples proposed human rights recommendations that were emblematic of Indigenous calls to action during the 1970s. During the 2-day Indigenous Peoples Caucus preparatory meeting, Indigenous peoples offered recommendations on enhanced participation. They identified that a necessary step was to go beyond their current status as recognized UN observers, instead that Indigenous peoples need to be on equal footing with member states. Member states means like Canada and the United States. That's what member states means. Some proposed to be called permanent observers, while others recommended governments or nations, which would be the appropriate, or nations, nation to nation. The recommendations of today's activists reflect the hopes of those who came before them in the 1970s, that Indigenous self-determination, sovereignty, and political status within the UN system would be fully recognized. So, 1970s and now, this is where we're at. And I guess we're the generation before the younger generations that have to pass on this knowledge in terms of who we are as sovereign Mi'kmaq peoples. I don't think that's a hard thing to do. One of the things we're going to do, I know that we're going to do, is create a website, tribal 7th district tribal website within, I say within the 2-month period. We'll find a webmaster. No, we've been talking about it long enough. I'm just going to find a webmaster, tell them what we want. It may cost money, but we're just going to do it. And in there, once we have that in there, then we can put all our historical, legal documents in there. We have mounts of documents, like the Bustee. I have most of those because I was involved in litigation. We were the ones, the tribal council, that signed a permit that time to Donald Germain and a few of the other boys, Kenny Mitchell and them. They were extracting sand from his place. That's what started the whole litigation. But I have all the court documents, rulings that came out, during trial, and then I have documents, historical documents, which talk about our district governing system that was in place in 1786, basically like the tribal council, district chief, second chiefs, or local chiefs. I have court documents when I was involved in court cases with the band council here, twice, in regards to the question of who was the legitimate original governing system, ancestral governing system. I think it was Chief, I think it was Dean Vicaire that was chief that time. And then at that time, we were asking for a declaratory judgment from the court, basically just a judgment. It wasn't going to go to a full-blown trial. And but the thing is, there was a Supreme Court case that came out a week before my case, and that Supreme Court case said that anybody that wants to represent people's rights has to have it in writing. It has to have the individual's consent that they in turn allow me to represent their collective rights. And the judge said, she said, the next time you come back, make sure you have that documentation. So we did that. We've got about over 300 signatures where people said, you know, we place our collective rights and treaty rights under the Listowitz Tribal Council. And now that we have those, you know, we can, if we have to, go back to the courts, well, then we're going to have the proper documentation. So, I guess, you know, it's going to be 2024, it's going to be a busy year. We'll get out, try to get all this done. I think it'll be easy because, like I said, I already worked with that group, so it's not like starting over. And they know who we are. You know, when I had responded to them through email, what we were doing in terms of controlling our fishery back then, they were quite interested. As you can see, because the way they're talking, they support
What's the name of that group again, Gary?
cultural and survival. Well, about down there, all you gotta do is just Google cultural survival. And I guess we should talk about it now that if we're going to do this, we have to have certain individuals spearhead this. You know, in the forming of alliances with these organizations, and eventually placing our grievances or position within that forum using these organizations. And I think they would be happy to assist us in any way. So we're going to have maybe 3-4 individuals to work on this, because not everybody can do it. Not everybody has the time, but and you really have to have a certain background on the legal, the historical, negotiating part of it, certain Aboriginal rights and treaty rights and so forth. But we'll deal with that at our next tribal meeting. Put forward some names and we'll vote on, or we won't vote on. We'll just either say, okay, we consent to having these individuals work on this. And it should cover the youth, elders, and next to the elders is our generation. So that's what we'll do.
So Gary, I'm
Yeah.
thinking, we need a resurgence of members here.
Yeah,
At one time, there was a lot of members with the tribal council.
yeah, but you know what happened?
What happened?
They all got bought out by the band council.
Okay. But there's a lot of
We
youth
need,
out there.
I agree, we need members,
Yeah,
but we need members whose hearts and minds are the same as ours.
true.
Because we've learned in 33 years, we've had this tribal council that had a revolving door. in, out, out, because it wasn't in their mind, it wasn't in their hearts. And the other thing was, and I said it, and I've said it here time and time again, if you want a doorknob or a window, no, you go down the hill. You don't give it away here. You give into what, you know, you can with this governing system. That's what makes it independent.
I think we should have a meeting like with an outreach to a lot of youth and whatever, and so we can develop some sort of strategy to recruit members and keep members.
Yeah.
Like you said, that have a passion for it. You know,
Yeah,
a lot of our
and
youth
they are,
struggle,
they are.
but there's a lot of youth out there that are just quietly, silently, just, you know, and they would come forward because it, and then we could work on a strategy, build those alliances. Like you say, you've already done the legwork for it, you've already opened the door for it. But I think that's just a suggestion I have, that our next meeting, we should have like a real public meeting and a real recruitment of members, youth members. You know, so, you know, how do we, you said it, how do we compete with beadworking and all that? It's, you know, it's not that we're competing, it's like, how do we involve the youth? Prioritize. How do we involve the youth in, you know, maintaining our rights, like making sure they understand and know that, you know, land is never for sale, it's our sustenance, it's,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, yeah, this is,
You know, do we do billboards after, do we do whatever to keep
Yeah.
it fresh in people's mind?
yeah,
And so this is just what I see, we should have a focus on the next meeting. And then we plan on who's gonna work with this alliance forming committee and things, just suggestions, I don't know.
Like Scott would say, we have to decolonize them. We have to decolonize them. Because the more we wait, the further they get pulled in.
yeah,
Further they get pulled in.
yeah, yeah.
They're in that big hole.
Yeah, but we can't assume that the youth know what we know.
They don't.
They don't, they seriously don't.
Like, they're being taught something different in high school than what's being said here.
Yeah,
Just talking to people, like people under the age of like 25 or 26 or so, seem to think that the government is on our side and wants the best for us. And when I try to say otherwise, they look at me like I'm crazy. Like, oh, why would the government want us gone? I'm like, what? Like, it's insane.
they don't understand.
They don't, but
And there's different categories.
Yeah, some people do,
Some don't understand,
some don't want to
some
understand.
don't want to understand. And some don't want to understand because they realize we don't have anything monetary that we can offer. And once they realize that, well, but there are some, you know, like you said before, they want to, but like the old saying goes, you know, if the horse doesn't want to drink, what do you do? You can bring it to water. But I know there's I've seen some postings from different youth in terms of wanting to talk about governance.
Make a difference.
But they have to understand first, before they even talk about that, they have to know their grassroots, ancestral governing systems. You know, and how our ancestors basically governed themselves. Because before it used to be the people. Not what it is now, it's kind of top heavy, you know, like, it's the people that are the power, once they understand that. And who they
The
are.
councillors don't understand it.
Huh?
I said even the councillors don't understand.
Well, this is it, that's the problem right there. It's not just a youth problem, but it's, but we can offer, you know, we can, how I see it, because we've gone through what you're saying, we've gone through the different, like you said, we used to have a lot of members, but, you know, some of them went because the grass was greener on the other side, let's put it that way. But with the new, if we're going to do anything with the youth, that's why I'm looking at doing that website.
Yeah.
Get it up. And all the documents that I have, because it's been
have
Shit.
to file somewhere.
Yeah, well, it's sitting in my basement. But I'd rather have it up there, but it was categorized, you know, the culture and everything, the political, it's all there. I can go back to the 1500, remember I told you about that book? Lacler?
The Gespegawagi.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's 1500. 1500 mentions of districts, the governing systems. Now that's a long, and I was asked, I mentioned it here 3 years ago, to be an expert witness on that, solely on the structure of districts, because we're the only district that has it, and revived it back in 1990. So it was the Alton Gas women that were protesting over there. They were charged for trespassing, so they said, no, we have permission from a district chief over there that we could do this. Jim Maloney was the district chief. But it wasn't over there, they don't have the structure like we do. What we have is, it basically goes right back to 15, 16, 1700, so that's why they asked, you know, since you revived your tribal council decades ago, it has been challenged by federal and provincial governments, and you know, they can't do anything about it. So anyways, I did the historical, right up to where we are, filed it, they filed it in the court, and about 2 months after, Alton Gas said, no, we're giving up. They stopped, they pulled out. Because if they would have went down that way, then the whole case would have came up, and it eventually would end up in the Supreme Court, right? Original ancestral governing system versus the Indian Act, and it's clear, because the Indian Act was only created 1876. So the province must have said, to hell with that, we don't need that. We'll put all that in there, and then these youth that we're talking about can read it, can have access to it, and they're more than welcome to join us in any of our meetings. You know, that's what we've been saying. A public meeting, well, we're just gonna have you know how public meetings were, they used to be.
It's a public meeting where we invite these youth, specific youth groups, we invite them, we extend it to the different districts, the communities in the district.
Well,
you know, we won't get 1 million people, but if we get 50 people, that's 50 more people than we have here.
I agree. I would say at that, if you know, or anybody here that, you know, in order to start on the right foot, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, we're here, we all have our children, we all have our nieces and nephews, and we know whether they'd be interested or not, or because if they are, they'll say right away, yeah, you're right, you know, I'd like to, well, okay, well, come and join us, you know, and then instead of going this way, we go this way. And believe me, I think once we do the website and the education part of it, people will start to understand what's happening, because right now, nobody knows what's happening internally, like between, let's say, not just the band or MMS and NNC, nobody understands, or they just hear bits and pieces of it. But even that is, it's important, but not so critical as to understanding who you are as a Mi'kmaq individual and how, you know, we came to be. Right up to, that's what makes you strong. Once you understand that, that's how I was. When I was a little kid, Barney Moods used to have a barber shop. And we were sitting there to get our brush cuts, you know, you just sit in there and waiting for your turn. All the old men used to be there. Solston, Josie, Albert Woods, you know, and you listen to it, they're talking about Bastille, they're talking about, well, he stole that, you know, and they knew, because they knew from their fathers how it happened. You're going back to almost 1700. And when you hear that, something just clicks. And that's how I started. And the boom and all that. You know, they used to chase us out of there, they get a kick in the ass by Bastille or, and
You understood.
yeah. And we never stopped. We used to go back. We'd go back. They'd be chasing us all around. Never caught us. But I felt that I wasn't trespassing because I felt even as a kid, I belonged there. And who would think that 1998, we challenged Bustede, and sure enough, we got the land back. You know?
Well, it's your turn.
Yeah, I saw Bustede's relatives over there, I was kicking them in the ass. But every one of us here has, nephews or whatever, cousins or,
It's
Let's-
not that
let's-
too early. I see youth out there that have potential,
yeah,
not necessarily related to them, but
yeah.
just sometimes
Okay,
just
yeah,
that
sure, even that.
outreach to like, I
Yeah.
see you're interested in this, that, why don't you come join us? And I think that goes a long way when you approach people,
I agree.
and it's not just, like you say, it's not like an open house, it's,
Yeah. Okay, we can do that. The
We'll
next,
get we'll get the video machines and we'll put our own stuff in their,
There you go.
in their machines.
yeah, well, that's what I was gonna say too, you wanna put
Yeah.
the website. I'm all for putting the documents on there, but I'm gonna be very honest, the youth are not gonna take the time to read it. However, they will take the time to click on your picture and listen to you talk about it,
Mhm.
and then you tell them read for more
Yeah.
information.
Well, we can have that in the website too.
Yeah,
But for the readers, I just wanna have something there
Yeah.
that's in there, you know?
well, it's always good to have the
stay there.
reading in there,
Yeah.
that stays in there, because it validates what they say, but if you really wanna put the word out there, you just make short video clips.
Yeah.
Explain what's in the document, talk about it, and then tell them, read it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Part of original governance anyways is oral teaching.
Oral teaching, yeah. True.
Yes.